least somewhat, the existentialists. So, everyone know what existentialism is? Familiar with it? A little bit about it? Familiar, somewhat? It's okay, we're going to talk a little bit about it. These are often considered keys of the postmodern prophets. There's a book by Stanley Grenz who talks about that, the postmodern prophets. They're people who kind of speak about existential issues and then understanding how that affects postmodernism. So there's two people I want to talk about. Some of you may have heard of them. Soren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche. I have to make sure I spell Kierkegaard right. Who's heard of the names? At least heard of the names. That's good, good. We're going to be talking about them. Soren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche could not be more different people than if you tried to paint Mother Teresa and Donald Trump into two different, I mean, they're just opposite people. But they both are considered existentialists. So we're going to talk about them, and we're going to see how these guys, and they echoed well into the 20th century. We can see how their influence echoes even into today. So when we talk, because pretty soon, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to start taking all the different threads that we've kind of been throwing threads out. We've been kind of pulling these threads out there. We're going to start pulling them together and trying to make some sense of all this. So Soren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche are going to be two postmodern prophets, so to speak. And we're going to try to draw them in with the rest of this discussion because it's actually very complicated. So Kierkegaard comes first. He was born in 1813, and he died in 1855. Not 1955, 1855. Goodness, it's like I can't talk today. He was born in Denmark. He was he did his master's thesis on the concept of ironies, studying Socrates. He was a deeply religiously devout Christian. He was very devout. Now, what you have to understand is the concept, the context in which he's operating. He's operating in Denmark, which has been a Christian nation at this point for well over 1,000 years. Okay, so Christianity is firmly entrenched in Denmark and the Danish people. The church and the state are they're like combined together. So when they take tax money, the tax money goes and supports the church. Like that's how integrated these things are. Kierkegaard looked at this context, and what he said was, and he's one of the first people to do this. I think Kierkegaard's influence is difficult to overstate. He's one of the first ones who says Christendom was a bad idea. Let me kind of give that some flesh and bones. But he said Christendom is the idea where the state and the church and the culture all get married together, and you come up with a Christianity that is kind of cultural. It's a cultural type of Christianity. I was born a Christian, I was raised a Christian, I kind of know Christian things to do, I kind of grew up in this way, and I live in a Christian nation, and so everything the nation does must be Christian. Kierkegaard reacts vehemently against this. He says, this is not the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to be in bed with the state. You're not supposed to be in bed with culture. Because what has happened is that the church has become enslaved, in bondage. It's become a slave of the culture. And so we've taken all the radical things, all the hard things, all the difficult things that Jesus calls us to do. We have taken those out of Christianity, and we have left nothing but fluff and nothing but feel-goodness. Reading Kierkegaard is a fantastic remedy against this type of cultural Christianity. But how does he do it? How does he? That's what his heartbeat passion is. He wants an authentic Christian. He wants to be authentically Christian. So how do you do this? We're going to make sure we're putting him in the time of the Enlightenment. He's a child of the Enlightenment. He's a child of the German Enlightenment with its idealism and the Hegelian, the uninterrupted flow of history. I think we've talked about that before about Hegel and the idea that history was moving on a unperturbed and continuous track upward. And Kierkegaard doesn't like any of this. really is an odd duck. He doesn't really belong in the 18th century. But that's when he was born. And so he kind of lays the groundwork for an en masse rejection of this. Now what he says is, at least the way he's interpreted, is he's interpreted that faith and reason are in conflict. That reason and faith do not go hand in hand. Just because something seems reasonable doesn't mean that that's Christian. So in a lot of ways, he's the guy who kind of follows, you might say he follows Tertullian, who says, I believe in the resurrection because it's absurd. Not in spite of it being absurd, but because it's absurd. He kind of pits reason against faith. Now, what is he driving at in this pitting? Well, we have to put man in his context. What is beginning to happen in the 1820s, 1830s Europe? What are some of the larger cultural things that's going on? Industrialization. We're getting industrialized. There's an industrial world. We're beginning to manufacture things and manufacture people. And the way that the Enlightenment works is they're gonna uncover all the secrets of the world. They're going to uncover all the secrets of humanity. They're going to be able to tell you why you selected the person you married, why you did the things that you did, because everything that you do has a rational purpose. It has a rational reason to it. You can make sense of it all because it's all going to make sense. And so that's what the Enlightenment was doing. We're going to make all the secrets of the universe known. We're going to uncover all the secrets of humanity. We're going to figure out how to make a perfect society. And Kierkegaard, in the midst of this, looks at all of this and goes, he kind of looks at Christendom, he looks at the industrialization, he looks at humanity moving forward in this unbridled, uninterrupted path of progress, and he says, what's it mean to be human when that's going on? Like, what is a human? Is a human perfectly rational? Does a human being actually do the rational choice? How many of us have ran into people that you say to them, I don't know why they chose that. I have no idea why they made that choice. It is not the rational choice. And yet, they still do it. No one else has had that experience running across people who do that? That is what Kierkegaard begins to pinprick. He begins to focus in on, and he says, we are not just cogs in a machine that is rolling towards an uninterrupted human history. Where is passion? What role does passion play in your life? What role does faith play in your life? Are you just going to church because you're getting up in the morning? That's what your parents told you to do when you were a kid? And you get up and you get up and you go and you do the same thing over and over and over again, mindlessly, thoughtlessly, passionatelessly. And that's the key for Kierkegaard. You're just doing it over and over and over again without thought, without engagement, without really being changed by the gospel. So what he wants to do is he wants to figure out who are humans. What is happening when Christ comes to us and confronts us? Who do we become? And what he says, what he argues, is that truth is subjective. There is no objective truth. There is a truth that is true for you. Because you passionately and you, with complete conviction, are engaged in it. That's what makes it true for you. Your passionate engagement with it. You are throwing yourself in wholeheartedly with no thought of the rationality of it. You know who he uses as his model? Abraham. What does God come to Abraham and do? God comes to Abraham and says, I want you to take your son, Isaac, your only son, the son of the blessing, and I want you to do what with him? Okay. Sacrifice him on Mount Moriah. What is this? In terms of rationality, God has asked Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. In terms of rationality, this is a terribly irrational, unethical. This is unethical.
Not according to the culture in which he was raised. according to the culture of Kierkegaard and us.
That's true. This is what Kierkegaard says, is he looks at Abraham and he says, this is an unethical thing to do. But what he's zeroing in on with Kierkegaard and Abraham is Abraham's willingness to engage. His willingness to do whatever God asked in whatever moment it meant. And what he believed was, God is not an object that you manipulate and you control. God is a subject that you interact with. Now, if you've ever been married, you know what I'm talking about. Your spouse is not an object for you to manipulate and control. You don't know your spouse objectively. You know your spouse subjectively. You know them as a subject. They know you, you know them. You don't tell them what they're going to do. You negotiate. You interact. I say this, you say this. I respond this way, you respond that way. That is his idea of subjectivity. That we ought to be engaged with truth, not as an object, not as an external object. And remember, in the Enlightenment time, truth is an external object. It doesn't exist in God. It doesn't exist inside man. It exists in the outside world out there, and we're accessing it. It is objectively out there. Well, what do men do with objects? What do we do with things? Why, we use them. We pick them up and we play with them, and we do stuff with them. They become tools for us. What do we do with subjects? What happens if we start treating people like they're objects?
They fight back.
They fight back. They don't want to be a part of it. Like, that's not how you treat people. You don't treat people as objects that you can manipulate and control. You treat people as subjects that you enter into a negotiation with. This changes. This doesn't end with his death in 1855. In some ways, Kierkegaard is still echoing today. So this is a guy who wants you to not follow Christ because you were born and baptized into the Danish church. He wants you to follow Christ because you are passionately committed, dedicated, and committed not to the truth, but to the person of Jesus Christ. That's what he wants out of us. What do we think of this guy? This is Søren Kierkegaard.
I'm looking up the guy's name because I can't think of it at the moment. But Walt Weinberg.
Okay?
Wrote a book entitled The Orphean Passages, in which he calls what Søren Kierkegaard is proposing, going backwards, the nouning of our faith, moving from the interaction and so forth. That faith is a verb. He calls it the dancing in the mists. It's active, it's alive, you are interacting, but we tend to move towards the objective. He calls it the nouning of our faith, in which it becomes a rock that you move around. It is dead.
Tool.
Yeah. And that it kills, the nouning of our faith kills your faith. And so he does that comparison backwards. That the faith needs to be that verb, that active. I'm not certain that I totally agree with it. Well, I know I don't. But there is some truth to what they are saying, in that in making it an object, we are bigger than it. Mm-hmm. We can move around it, set it aside, pick it up, put it down. Mm-hmm. It is not a verb or a part of who we are actively.
Yeah, it's an object that we manipulate, yeah.
I can respect Kierkegaard because I disagree with a lot of what he says. You know, I'm not a Tertullianite. I'm not a Kierkegaardianite. I think Athens has everything to do with Jerusalem.
Okay.
You know, I think faith and reason. Frankly, I think reason is the handmaiden of faith. Not that they are completely distinct, and that we do have to be careful in how much they bleed over. But that's easy to say when, after 200 years after Kierkegaard, that we've made Christianity, we've delved into some of the more academic sides of faith. You know, when it seemed like reason was just sprinting on ahead of faith, I can see why Kierkegaard, you know, a committed Christian would want to pump the brakes.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what he's looking for. He's like, because we have to keep him in the time and the place of the German Enlightenment. And there's a sterileness, there's a disconnectedness, there's a blaseness about Christianity in this time. Oh yeah, this is what we believe, and we're always like this. It's kind of just givenness that Kierkegaard goes, man, there's something more to faith than this. Other thoughts on this? Anyone else? Can we see how he echoes this idea that truth is subjective and it has to be true for me? Can we see how that has kind of echoed even into today? That may be true for you, but that's not necessarily true for me. Right?
We've redefined how he uses the term subjective. We have changed that definition and then go back and impose the new definition on his.
Reading ourselves into him, making him say what we want to say.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Wherein what he is saying is it needs to be that alive, that interacting. He's not saying that there is truth, but he's going, we've got to be alive, we've got to be interacting with it. And we've taken that and said, well, the truth basically doesn't exist at all. It's a matter of how you perceive it.
Right, and then you can see how his words, when you start talking about Immanuel Kant, the thing as we see it. There's the object as it is in itself, and the thing as we perceive it. And you start moving that into the 20th century, you can see how what he's saying can easily get taken in with what's going on in the larger context of postmodernism.
We're almost taking it the other direction he wanted to. He's saying, you know, it's not objective in that you are bigger than it, you can manipulate it, like Kevin said. He's saying it's alive, it's interactive. We're saying when we say truth is subjective, we mean truth is something inside you.
Yes.
Like it's not even a dead thing outside of you that you can control. It's entirely internal.
Yes. It's truth for you.
How he uses the term subjective, we have changed that definition and then go back and impose the new definition on his.
Reading ourselves into him, making him say what we want to say.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Wherein what he is saying is it needs to be that alive, that interacting. He's not saying that there is truth, but he's going, we've got to be alive, we've got to be interacting with it. And we've taken that and said, well, the truth basically doesn't exist at all. It's a matter of how you perceive it.
Right, and then you can see how his words, when you start talking about Immanuel Kant, the thing as we see it. There's the object as it is in itself, and the thing as we perceive it. And you start moving that into the 20th century, you can see how what he's saying can easily get taken in with what's going on in the larger context of postmodernism.
We're almost taking it the other direction he wanted to. He's saying, you know, it's not objective in that you are bigger than it, you can manipulate it, like Kevin said. He's saying it's alive, it's interactive. We're saying when we say truth is subjective, we mean truth is something inside you.
Yes.
Like it's not even a dead thing outside of you that you can control. It's entirely internal.
Yes. It's truth for you. Excellent Christian. Excellent Christian. I don't agree with everything that he says. But the guy passionately wanted to follow Christ. This is one model of what we might call postmodernism, which is this idea of passionate engagement in whatever you're doing. I'm not sure that's sustainable. I mean, this is my critique of Kierkegaard. I'm not sure that you do everything that you do with passion and engagement. I've been married 22 years now. I love my wife. But I'm not sure that every moment of every day is passion and engagement. Sometimes it's more along the lines of, okay, well, what has to be done today? Right? Less about passion, more about, okay, well, what wood do we have to chop today? This is what's got to get done. All right, well, I'll do this, you do this. We'll meet in the middle somewhere around 10:30 tonight. Anyone else have that experience? Right? Right? Well, Kierkegaard is on to something in this sense of passion, but I'm not sure that that sense of passion can maintain everything. I just don't know that it's maintainable.
you're pointing out what is the weakness in most marriages today.
Mhm.
And that is that passion is necessary. Otherwise, there is no engagement.
Mhm.
However, as with love, commitment is not exclusively about passion, because as we see in marriages today, as the passion isn't there all the time, we skip town.
Yeah. Well, do you see why in this context, why we would skip town?
Mhm.
We want to make passion about everything, and if passion is lacking, what happens?
Well, I'm not being true to myself to stay in this marriage.
Yeah. So, I mean, in some ways you could say we've gone from one form of kind of craziness with Kierkegaard's era, and we have taken him so far that now everything has to be passionately done, which is not being properly done. Man, I'm just not sure I can live that way. Setting yourself on fire about everything, really? My car has a broken radiator. Do I have to have passion before I go out there and fix it? Some things are just kind of done because they're necessary, not because you're passionate about it. So this is where I think Kierkegaard is very useful. You want to fire up your devotional life, you want to fire up love for God, read some Kierkegaard. It's excellent for firing up this passion for God, this passion for life, this living. And in the context of the Enlightenment, you can see what he's shooting after. Men have become machines. You're a cog in a wheel, and he's asking, what does it mean to be human? Well, it means you throw yourself into things. It means you engage. It means you're passionate. It means you believe. And you can see when you're looking at the Enlightenment why he's reacting to all of that. It's not just sterile. It's not just mindless. It's not just truth. It's truth. And you're engaged with it. So that's one version of postmodernism. I think all of us, if we were true to ourselves, we would go, oh, you like that? If we were true to ourselves, we would look at Kierkegaard and go, man, I want to be there. Like, it's aspirational. Man, I want to be like that in everything with Christ. I want to have that. I don't know how much I can, but I want it. We're going to listen to the other side of existentialism. This is the Friedrich Nietzsche existentialism. He was born in 1844, and he died in 1900 of syphilis. So Friedrich Nietzsche is, you might call him the Jekyll, or the Hyde to Dr. Jekyll. They're both considered in later times to be existentialists. By the way, nobody knew what to do with Kierkegaard. In his own lifetime, nobody knew what to do with him. They didn't know where to place him. They didn't know how to think of him because he didn't really fit with anybody. This is what they said. He's a Christian. That's about as far as they can get with Kierkegaard because they didn't know how to fit him in. Along comes Nietzsche, and then they go, oh, there's some things between these two that we can begin to see commonalities. Okay? But Nietzsche does, and Nietzsche did not write as some kind of a person who's trying to write against Kierkegaard. Nietzsche's writing in a similar context. In the Industrial Revolution, in a post-Enlightenment world. And this is what he says. He wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. So I should say, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He makes the very famous statement, God is dead and we have killed him. It's kind of weird reading. It's more like poetic reading. And when he goes on to say, how is this possible? It's like drinking up the ocean or swallowing all the stars in the sky. It does not seem possible. But the idea is this. The power of God has shrunk in our world. That God is just a distant afterthought. We know all that we need to know. We understand all that we need to understand. We've got this. We've got it. Remember, he's writing post-Enlightenment. He's writing Industrial Revolution. They're making all kinds of modern advances, and they are dominating the world. Europe is dominating the world colonially. We've got this. We don't need you anymore. God, you are dead. You are not a necessary purpose for our life at all. We are completely able to do this all on our own. And in Beyond Good and Evil, he begins to spell out what this means. Now, what Kierkegaard and Nietzsche are both asking questions about what's it mean to be human in this world. What's it mean to live as an authentic human being? Kierkegaard says faith, love, passion, complete involvement. That's really what it means to be human. Nietzsche says, morality is for the weak. These are people who are unwilling to do what needs to be done. You want to do what you want to do. And he's the one who gave us this, you use will to power. You choose to do something. Choice. I will do this. Not because it's rational, not because it's ethical, not because it's moral, not because society says I'm supposed to, but because I have within me a will to power. I can do something. Now remember, Nietzsche can't write, he's not writing this from South Africa. He's not a South African, right? Do we think will to power is going to come out of South Africa in 1844? No, it's not. Right? It's not an African idea. This is a European idea that says we are in control. We are the steerers of the ship. Nobody can tell us anything. We can will ourselves to power. And so he kind of takes on people who would question this. What do you mean? What about the morally good? This is what he says in Beyond Good and Evil. Morality is for weak people. There are two people. There's the big, strong, burly Mike Brown, and then there's the weak and flabby Kevin.
Thank you very much.
Right? He's weak and flabby. He's unwilling to do what he wants to do. He knows what he wants. He sees the guy, he covets what he has, and he wants to go take it. But he's afraid. Fear dominates him. So what does Kevin do? Kevin makes up morality. It gives him an excuse to not do what he really wants to do. He really wants to do that thing. And this is where Nietzsche's tapping into a kind of debased, animalistic, what we would call sinfulness here. You really want to do this, but because you're unwilling to will to power to do it, you then make up a morality and you call theft bad. And so he looks at me and I break into a store and I bash the guy upside the head. And what do? I take what I want. I take it. Because I want it. I want it. I took it. I'm going to go get it. I killed the guy in the process. That is me doing what? Willing to power. I will do what I choose to do. And you can't stop me. I will myself to do it. And he looks at people like Kevin and he says, you wuss, you big weenie, you are afraid to actually dig into yourself and do what you want to do. You're making up all of these barriers between you and your act. The act that you want. You put all of these barriers in there that gets you off the hook from acting. You don't have to act in this world. You're passive. You're a passive little sheep. You little bad sheep. You're a passive little sheep who's acting in the world fearfully, and you're creating all these structures, social structures, that stop you from doing what you know you want to do, but you're afraid to actually do it.
Smacks a lot of Maximilian Robespierre.
Not that far different.
Yeah.
Nietzsche would be the classic guy in the cartoon where, the mom says, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, it's how you play the game, and the dad says, that's what losers say.
That's exactly what losers. You see what I'm saying? He's like, of course a loser says that. Because they're losers. Because you're unwilling to do what it takes to win the game. So there is, and Nietzsche says there is no good or evil. God is dead, we have killed him. There is no larger person looking at what we're doing, giving us any moral activity. It is you and us. It's you and me. And we're in this world, and the stronger will survive, and the weak will die. And we've got to purge ourselves from all this good and evil language, and just have will to power. Just do. If you want to do it, do it. You want to have it, have it. Get rid of all of these social constraints that really are just rules that are enabling weak people. You want to be strong? Go be strong. By the way, he's the one who gives us the term Hoover Mitch. Do we know where Hoover Mitch gets used? In the 20th century by a particular dictator who lived in Northern Europe, who thought they were going to create the Hoover Mitch. Anyone have any idea? Adolf Hitler used this idea. And we can see why, right? Can you see why he would use this idea? We're going to create a race of supermen who are not going to be constrained by ideas of morality. We are going to do what we darn well want to do. and no one's going to stop us.
Except that we did.
And that's where we're at, yeah.
Like, how could they pursue that, not realizing that at one point they really thought that they could achieve that? What would stop them from going after each other?
Well, remember, morality is for the weak. The strong rise to the top. The strong would come to the top, the weak would drop to the bottom. And they ought to. Remember, Darwinism is right smack dab in the middle of this too, right? Darwin happens just about 10, 15 years after he's born. So Darwinism is on the rise at this very time, and this idea that the strong should survive and the weak should die off, this is where eugenics comes from. And you can see why Nietzsche's in many ways building on all this. But he doesn't talk about what's rational. He doesn't want rationality either. He wants what? Will, choice, decision. Now, what do these two have in common? Kierkegaard and Nietzsche. Do you see why I call them Jekyll and Hyde? Like, they are nothing like each other. Nothing. One is saying be passionately engaged for God, follow God no matter the cost, follow God no matter the price. And Nietzsche says what? There is no God. Do what you want to do, completely and utterly passionately.
Did he change his tune when he caught syphilis?
Well, the question is, how much did syphilis affect what he was saying? As far as I know, no. Some people today will argue that Nietzsche was being sarcastic. He was trying to overspeak. Here's the thing: if God is dead, I don't see exactly why Nietzsche is wrong. Now, it's horrible to contemplate. It's terrible to contemplate. But if there isn't a God who is over top of us, objectively able to see what we're doing and morally ascribe value to it, if it's just us living in the world, then I kind of have to go with Nietzsche. If that really is the truth. And anyone who would pander, would soften this will to power, Nietzsche would say, you're just afraid to do what you know you want to do. You're just a chicken. That's what he would say to the 21st century people who are all like, there is no God, we get to do as we want. He goes, then why aren't you out there doing what you want? Because I don't want those things. Oh, really? You don't think you could advance your career a little bit better if that guy was out of the way? You don't think that would work?
It is ultimately self-destructive.
Well, yeah, it's unlivable.
Yeah.
But in a different way than Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard is in some way, who can live with that kind of passion all the time? And yet Nietzsche's like, who could live, what society would you build if we were all living this way?
It wouldn't be a society.
Yeah. It would be all a pecking order. At the top of the food chain is
Lord of the Flies.
It would be Lord of the Flies. At the top of the food chain, you are only so good to me as you give me what I want out of you. The moment you cease to give me what I want, you are no longer worth anything. So what do we do with these guys as we come into the 20th century? Can we see their effect? Can we see how they're playing out? What do we think of this?
Well, they both kind of helped form the idea that, meaning is generated internally by an individual. And you say that's what's the same between them. They have their different sides of the coin, but it's all about what you believe in, what you want, what you are passionate about. And it's been watered down after the Nazis, but we still hear, Oprah is like, it's all about, be an authentic person. Or people will post on Facebook, I'm sick of all these fake people, you need to be real. It's just about matching, and even like the intellectuals like Jordan Peterson always talks about matching your actions with your presuppositions and then your rationality and then your values and then your social structures and like aligning the planets. That's what it means to be authentically human. To have your actions match your will, match your rationality, match your, everything.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this? What do we think of these guys? How should we as Christians engage with them?
You engage in two very different ways. Acknowledging that in many respects meaning is constructed internally, meaning to the Nietzsche, there is a certain amount of having to confront the fact that you're not the center of the universe. You are answerable to others, whether you like it or not.
Because we have more power than you, which is what he'd say.
He would say that. The problem is that is self-destructive. A Nietzsche life is a self-destructive one. But to the Kierkegaard side of things, passion and commitment need to work together. Passion of its own does die out. It can flare up, certainly. Don't believe that? Walk into my class first day of class. Yeah, I love it. Middle of the semester? Maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But I'm happiest in a classroom. But I have to have the commitment to see it through. To the Nietzsche, if this is all there is, go commit suicide. What is there to look towards, to drive you forward, to have, to say, well, the will to power is ultimately empty and unfulfilling. You will never achieve what you chase.
So how do we got Nietzsche here, who he says is unlivable, and we see Kierkegaard, who is talking about passion, and we talk about this kind of belief that is almost unattainable. Do we see these guys kind of speaking into our lives today? How do we see these guys speaking into our lives today? Do we see the effects, or are they just two dead Europeans?
So it also seems like they're both pointing out something else that is unlivable, which is just like being a little cog in a machine, or not very fulfilling.
Sure.
Or not very human to be that way.
Yeah, you're a cog in the machine that other people are going to kind of come in and kind of just play you like you want to be played, and we're all going to be okay with that? Really? Isn't there something about being human? This is where I think they're both of them, as terrible as they are, they're both of them onto this idea that you're not just a cog. Mm-hmm. You're an active agent in the world. You know, I think one of the ways I describe this is no one set about to create the social welfare system in our country with the intent of enslaving millions of people to it. Like, that was not anyone's intent. What was their intent when they started the war on poverty?
Ostensibly, some of them wanted to end poverty.
Yeah, absolutely. And so here's the meaning. The meaning that came from the top down in the government that they gave to the rest of society. But here's what happened. Everybody else in society took what was happening in their own meaning. They didn't take the meaning that the government wanted us to get. Hey, we're going to end poverty. We're going to get you off of this poverty train. We're going to end poverty. People are actually individual agents, and they take out of the system not what you want them to take, but what? What they want to take. This is one of the great mistakes, I would argue, of the whole top-down approach to society. People are their own agents too. And they do their own thing too. And what you intend a project for is not always what ends up coming out of it. Because these people are actually agents too. They get to do stuff too. They don't just take your meaning and go, oh, I'm getting off poverty now. They actually say their way that they can use this as their way to live their life. It's not just one person's meaning gives meaning to everyone else. People are active agents, and we act and are acted upon.
You also have the difficulty with that of the law of unintended consequences, where that may have been your meaning, that may have been your intention, but the law of unintended consequences also says, you know what, there are these ramifications that is not necessarily their conscious decision to take from it, but it's what's going to happen given the impetus. of it.
Could be. I would argue that people are not passive. They're active. They have active goals in this world. And when you throw things out there, you may have an intent for what's going to happen, but other people make something come out of it because they're active agents too.
Yeah.
You see that in missions work too. You know, like Kevin Jones would say, you know, we say, my goodness, everybody's dying of cholera. You need clean water. Let's dig you a well. They say, no, we want a school. And we're like, what? Let's dig you a well.
Let's dig you a well so you don't have cholera.
They said, no, we want a school. We need education. And so if you're, a lot of being part of
Yes.
an effective mission is like, okay, let's build them the school, and then lesson 1 is why you need clean water to get rid of cholera. But you can't, like you said, it's a negotiation. You can't just impose, this is how we're going to help you. It's, how can we help you?
Yeah. You can see these guys echoing into our world today. You can see some people have hints of postmodernism, hints of this existentialism in them. I would argue a lot of the ideas that are, the whole transgender, LGBTQ, it's a weird duck. It isn't a result of any one process, okay? It's a result of weird convergences of things, all right? Existentialism makes the idea that I can become something that no one else sees me as, it makes that possible. Existentialism makes it possible for you to say, I don't care what you think I am, this is what I think I am. And I will choose to make myself this way. Existentialism makes that possible. Without it, the LGBTQ concept isn't even possible. Because in culture, you are who we assign you values to. That's who you are. Existentialism gives the idea that values are not bestowed externally, but they are what? Created internally. You can't have the LGBTQ movement without this. You're just not going to get there. That meaning comes internally, not externally. So is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Let's pray.
Well said.
I think they're just there. They're just there. And we have to interact with them, and we have to use them, and interact with them subjectively. And try to pull meaning out collectively for us in our world. So, I don't know if you guys have seen this out there. I think these are interesting ideas. If you want to read more, I would highly recommend Kierkegaard. If you're interested academically, Nietzsche's a great read. In terms of if you're doing apologetics with people, I would actually go with Kierkegaard. Nietzsche's actually a better go. Hey, this is what Nietzsche believed. Why is he wrong? Listen, I don't agree with him, and here's why I don't agree with him. Why don't you agree with him? And you can say, I can't see why Nietzsche's wrong, given that there is no God.
Yeah, this is the logical conclusion to the concept that God does not exist.
God is dead and we have killed him.
Yeah. It's a completely logical conclusion.
Utterly and completely unlivable. Yeah, I can't live it. Which should tell us something, by the way, right? Should tell us something. Father, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for this opportunity to talk about great men who have impacted the world. Help us to recognize how great people can impact our lives today. We are thankful for all that you've given us. Send us home with your grace and your mercy. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.